You may have left the conversation hours ago, but your mind is still trying to win it. You are driving home, and suddenly you discover the perfect response. You are standing in the shower, defending motives nobody is questioning in that moment. You lie down to rest, but instead of sleeping, you begin preparing for accusations that have not been made. Then morning comes, and your body is tired from fighting a conflict that never resumed. The other person is not in the room, but their voice is still directing your emotions. Think about that. How can someone be absent and still control the atmosphere within you? How can a conversation that lasted 10 minutes occupy 10 hours of your attention? The problem is not simply that an upsetting thought entered your mind. Thoughts will come, memories will return, feelings will rise. The deeper problem is that the old interaction has been given permission to become a present residence. You have allowed someone who left the room to remain seated in your mind. And every time you rehearse the defense, rewrite the ending, or imagine their defeat, you give that moment more of your life. You are spending today trying to repair yesterday in a courtroom that exists only within you. Now, this does not mean the hurt was imaginary. Perhaps you were misunderstood. Perhaps someone dismissed you, misrepresented you, or spoke without respect. The pain may be real, but real pain does not require endless mental participation. A thought may knock at the door of your mind without being appointed governor of your peace. You cannot always control what enters your awareness, but you can decide what receives your attention, what shapes your emotions, and what directs your next step. That is where freedom begins, not by denying what happened, but by taking responsibility for what continues inside you. We are going to follow this inner conversation from its trigger to its hidden desire. We will determine when something truly needs to be said, when a boundary must be established, and when the wisest response is release. You do not have to suppress your voice, and you do not have to obey every thought. You can choose clarity over agitation, purpose over reaction, and peace over an imaginary victory. But before you can end this argument, you must understand how it begins. So let us slow the pattern down and examine how one painful moment becomes an all-night trial. It often begins with one sentence. Someone misunderstands your intention. Someone speaks to you without respect. Someone dismisses your concern, judges your character, or ends the discussion before you can give a complete answer. The moment passes, but something inside you says that is not how this should end. Watch the sequence carefully. First, something is said. Then emotion rises. Next, your identity feels threatened. The mind assigns meaning to the moment. They think I am weak. They believe I am wrong. They do not value me. Then rehearsal begins. This is how one conversation becomes an internal courtroom. You become the attorney, constructing the argument. You become the witness, repeating what happened. You become the judge, declaring what should have happened. Yet somehow you also remain the defendant, returning again and again to prove your innocence before people who are not even present. And every time you retry the case, the feeling becomes stronger. No new evidence has appeared. No new conversation has occurred. Nothing outside you has changed. But the mind has repeated one interpretation until it feels larger than the original event. That is why you must distinguish memory from rehearsal. Memory says this happened. Rehearsal says let me enter it again and force it to end differently. Memory can teach you. Rehearsal tries to make the past obey you. But the past cannot obey you. It has already happened. Some of you may say, but I cannot help what I feel. The emotion is real. The sting is real. The disappointment is real. You are not wrong for feeling the impact of what happened. But feeling the first wound and repeatedly reopening it are not the same thing. There is a moment when pain becomes participation. There is a point where the other person stops speaking, but you continue the speech for them. You imagine the next accusation, create your next defense, predict their reply, and then defeat the reply you invented. Let me ask you, what sentence keeps returning? What accusation are you still answering? What final impression are you trying to change? Are you remembering what was said, or are you rehearsing what you wish you had said? Do not condemn yourself when you recognize the pattern. Observe it. Name it. Interrupt it. What you can observe, you can question. What you can question, you no longer have to obey. The loop is not mysterious now. A word triggered an emotion. The emotion touched your identity. Your mind assigned a meaning. Repetition kept that meaning alive. That is the mechanism. But here is the deeper truth. The argument is rarely only about the words that were spoken. Beneath those words, something in you felt threatened. And until you identify what you are trying to protect, the courtroom in your mind will keep calling the same case. What then felt threatened? The surface argument may have concerned a meeting, a forgotten promise, a careless remark, or a decision. But beneath that incident, another fear may have awakened. You feared being seen as foolish, weak, selfish, dishonest, difficult, unworthy. That is why the mind keeps returning to the scene. It is not merely correcting a statement, it is defending an identity. When your sense of worth depends on external approval, another person's opinion stops feeling like an opinion. It feels like a verdict. Their misunderstanding becomes a sentence you believe you must overturn. Their criticism becomes a courtroom in which your entire character is placed on trial. But your identity was never meant to be rented from public approval. Anything rented can be taken back by the owner. If people's praise gives you worth, their criticism can remove it. If acceptance creates your peace, rejection can destroy it. If being understood makes you secure, misunderstanding will make you desperate. Identity rooted in truth listens to opinions without becoming imprisoned by them. It can examine correction, admit error, and make necessary changes. But it does not collapse merely because someone has formed an incomplete picture. Think about it this way. Your emotions are like the temperature inside your home. When you allow another person's judgment to determine your inner condition, you hand them the thermostat. They misunderstand you, and your peace becomes cold. They compliment you, and suddenly you feel warm again. They ignore you, and your entire day changes. Why should someone else carry that authority? Now, this does not mean every false judgment should be ignored. An untrue accusation may affect a relationship, a responsibility, or a decision. There are times to clarify facts. There are times to correct the record. There are times to establish a boundary and speak firmly. Internal stability does not forbid correction. It prevents correction from becoming desperation. You can tell the truth without begging to be believed. You can explain your position without placing your worth in the listener's hands. You can speak clearly and still remain peaceful if they refuse to agree. So, complete this sentence honestly. If they continue believing this about me, I fear that it means what comes next. That you are not respected, that you are not lovable, that your intentions do not matter, that you have failed. There is the deeper wound. There is the belief your mind has been defending. Separate your worth from their interpretation. Recover the thermostat. Let truth govern your identity. And once the threatened identity is exposed, another question becomes unavoidable. What secret outcome have you been trying to obtain through all this rehearsal? Beneath the defense is often a hunger not merely to be heard, but to be vindicated. Vindication is the hidden prize in many imaginary arguments. Your mind calls the rehearsal preparation. It tells you, I am only getting ready in case this comes up again. But often you are not preparing for a conversation. You are negotiating for control over something that has already left your authority. You imagine delivering the perfect comeback. In your mind, the other person finally becomes silent. They admit they were wrong. They apologize exactly as you hoped. Perhaps everyone who doubted you suddenly sees the truth and takes your side. The scene ends with you understood, affirmed, and proven right. It feels satisfying for a moment. Then the argument begins again. Why? Because an imagined victory cannot produce real surrender. The other person is not present. The past has not changed. You still cannot guarantee what they will believe, say, or do. So the mind keeps rewriting the scene, hoping that another version will create the certainty the last version could not provide. Think about it this way. You are paying rent in your own mind to someone who may not even be thinking about the encounter. They occupy the best room. They consume your attention. They interrupt your work, your rest, and your relationships. Yet you are paying the cost. That is too expensive. Now, do not confuse release with abandoning justice. Justice and vindication are not the same. Justice may require you to tell the truth, preserve a record, protect someone, correct false information, establish a boundary, or take responsible action. Justice asks, what must be done? Vindication asks, how can I make them see me the way I need to be seen? One is concerned with truth and responsibility. The other is dependent upon emotional surrender from another person. One can guide a clear action. The other can keep you imprisoned because you cannot command another person's conscience. And while you are chasing their acknowledgement, they remain at the center of your inner world. Even after the meeting ends, even after the relationship changes, even after they walk away, your life is still organized around defeating their opinion. Let me ask you plainly, do you want resolution or do you want surrender? Do you need to address an unresolved matter or do you need the other person to confess that you were right? Would a responsible action solve the issue or will nothing satisfy you except their agreement? Be honest. Honesty is not condemnation. It is the doorway to freedom. Stop disguising the desire for control as preparation. Identify what truly requires action and release what requires another person to become who you cannot make them become. Your peace cannot wait for their verdict. But how do you know whether continued thinking is producing responsible clarity or merely rehearsing pain? There is a simple test. Preparation moves you toward a decision, while rehearsal keeps you circling the wound. Preparation moves you toward a decision. Rehearsal keeps you circling the wound. You can recognize preparation by what it produces. Preparation identifies the facts. It clarifies the purpose of the conversation. It chooses language that is truthful without being destructive. It decides what boundary may be necessary. Then, when the work is complete, preparation stops. Rehearsal does not stop. The speech keeps changing. The imaginary opponent keeps returning. In one version, you are calm. In another, you are forceful. In one version, they apologize. In another, they attack. And you prepare another attack against the response you invented. The emotion grows hotter, but no clear action emerges. Preparation produces a plan. Rehearsal produces pressure. So when the conversation begins again in your mind, ask 3 questions. First, did this thought reveal anything new? If you are repeating the same conclusion with different words, you are not gaining wisdom. You are recycling emotion. Second, is there an action within my control? Can you make a request, correct a fact, apologize, establish a boundary, or schedule a necessary conversation? If there is an action, identify it. If there is no action, admit that continued thinking cannot manufacture control. Third, have I already reached this conclusion more than once? If you decided 2 hours ago what should be said, why are you still delivering the speech? At some point, repetition is no longer preparing you. It is consuming you. Useful preparation can usually be written down. State what happened. State what matters. State what you will request or do. Then put the paper away. A clear plan does not need to follow you into every room. Compulsive rehearsal is different. It demands your attention while you work. It interrupts your rest. It steals time from people who are actually present. It keeps collecting emotional payment without giving you a decision. Some of you may say, but this issue is important. I cannot simply stop thinking about it. Yes, it may be important, but agitation is not proof of importance. An issue can matter deeply without being revisited every hour. Calmness does not mean you do not care. Calmness means your care has become disciplined. Here is the decision rule. When thinking no longer creates clarity, it is no longer preparation. At that moment, stop. Refuse another imaginary round. Return to the action you can take or the peace you must protect. You are not denying the event, you are denying it unlimited access. But recognizing an unproductive loop is only the beginning. The feeling may still be intense, and the impulse to respond may still be strong. You must now learn what to do in that charged space between emotion and action, because that space is where wisdom either takes control or reaction takes over. The space between emotion and action is where wisdom must be given room to speak. Emotion is a signal, not a command. Anger may signal that a boundary was crossed. Hurt may signal that something valuable was lost. Fear may signal that you believe danger is near. Listen to the signal, but do not surrender your authority to it. You can feel anger without becoming destructive. You can feel hurt without becoming cruel. You can feel fear without allowing fear to decide your direction. Maturity is not the absence of emotion. It is the discipline to examine emotion before obeying it. Reaction seeks immediate release. It wants to send the message now, answer the accusation now, expose the person now, and make them feel what you feel. Response asks a different question. What action will protect my future, my integrity, my peace, and my purpose? That question creates space. Think about muddy water in a glass. If you keep stirring it, you cannot see through it. The water does not become clear through more agitation. It becomes clear when the stirring stops and the sediment is allowed to settle. Your inner world works the same way. You cannot demand clarity while continually stirring the offense. So create a pause. Stop composing the reply. Breathe slowly. Put down the device. Step away from the imaginary scene. Pray, become quiet, or take a walk. Do not make a permanent decision while your vision is narrowed by a temporary emotional storm. Give the feeling time to speak without allowing it to take the throne. Then ask one anchoring question. What response will protect my future rather than merely discharge my feeling? Some of you may think pausing means surrendering. It does not. A pause is not denial. It is not passivity. It is not permission for someone to mistreat you again. You may still need to confront the issue, correct a falsehood, end access, or establish a firm boundary. But you will do it from clarity, not combustion. Restraint is not weakness. Restraint is recovered government. When another person can provoke you and determine the speed of your response, they are still directing your behavior. But when you pause, you take back the clock. You decide when to speak. You decide what to say. You decide what action serves truth rather than impulse. Your first feeling deserves acknowledgement, but it does not deserve the final decision. Create distance. Let the water settle. Refuse to move at the speed of provocation. And from that quieter place, you can finally name what remains unresolved. Instead of fighting a vague battle against an imagined opponent, you can identify the exact fact, feeling, wound, boundary, or responsibility that still requires your attention. When the emotional water settles, do not return immediately to the argument. Name the issue. Take the entire cloud of thoughts and place it into one sentence. What remains unresolved for me is, do not say everything. Do not say they ruined everything. Precision is power. Confusion keeps you circling, but clarity gives you a direction. Begin with what verifiably happened, what was actually said, what action actually occurred. Separate the event from the speech your mind has added since the event. Second, identify the meaning you assign to it. Did you decide their interruption meant they did not respect you? Did their silence mean they rejected you? Did their disagreement mean they believed you were incompetent? The event and your interpretation may be connected, but they are not identical. Third, name the emotion. Were you angry, embarrassed, afraid, disappointed, or hurt? Do not hide behind anger if the deeper feeling is humiliation or grief. Fourth, identify the value or boundary that was affected. Was honesty violated? Was trust damaged? Was your time treated carelessly? Was a responsibility neglected? Fifth, state the outcome you are seeking. Do you want important information corrected? Do you want different behavior? Do you need to repair harm, make amends, establish distance, or accept that something has ended? Now examine your story carefully. Repetition can exaggerate. It can invent motives, predict future attacks, and make you answer words the other person never spoke. You begin fighting not only what happened, but everything you fear might happen next. Ask yourself, does my present reaction belong entirely to this event? Perhaps an old rejection has entered the room. Perhaps a former betrayal is speaking through the current disappointment. Perhaps the person in front of you touched a wound they did not create. That does not make your feeling false. It means your response may be carrying more history than this moment deserves. You must also separate ownership. You own your clarity. You own your conduct. You own your boundaries, your choices, and your next step. The other person owns their conscience, their interpretation, and their response. Do not accept responsibility for what belongs to them, And do not avoid responsibility for what belongs to you. Reduce the issue to one actionable concern. 1. If action is required, name it plainly. If no responsible action remains, then the real work may be grief, forgiveness, releasing control, or rebuilding trust in yourself. An imaginary debate cannot perform any of those tasks. Now the fog has a name. The wound has a location. The responsibility has an owner. You are no longer fighting everything. You are examining something specific. And once the true issue is named, you are ready for the disciplined decision. Should you speak now, wait for a wiser moment, establish a boundary, or allow the matter to end? Now, ask the question many people avoid. Does anything actually need to be said? Do not begin with, what do I feel like saying? Begin with, what would speaking serve? Would it serve truth, repair, safety, responsibility, a necessary boundary? Or would it merely give you the temporary satisfaction of presenting your case and imagining yourself proven right? Purpose must decide whether you speak, not pressure. First, test the practical stakes. If you remain silent, will ongoing harm continue? Will an important responsibility remain unclear? Is there a relationship that can reasonably be repaired through honest communication? Is there something entrusted to you, a person, a commitment, a reputation, a duty, that responsible action requires you to protect? If the answer is yes, communication may be necessary. Second, test the audience. Is this person capable of listening? Have they ever received correction, acknowledged harm, or participated in an honest exchange? Or have they repeatedly distorted your words, dismissed your experience, and used every explanation as material for another conflict? Wisdom does not merely ask, do I have something true to say? Wisdom asks, is this a place where truth can be responsibly delivered? Third, test your goal. Can you state the desired outcome without requiring the other person to agree, apologize, or validate your identity? You can request changed behavior. You can correct information. You can define what access you will permit. But if success requires them to confess that you are right, your peace is still tied to their response. After these tests, there are 4 legitimate decisions. You may speak now with calmness because the issue is clear and the moment is appropriate. You may wait because truth spoken at the wrong time can be buried beneath emotion. You may communicate only a boundary because further explanation will not create understanding. Or you may release the need to engage because nothing useful remains to be accomplished. Some of you fear that silence means the other person wins. But winning an argument and winning in life are not the same. They may keep their opinion while you keep your direction. They may tell their version while you preserve your integrity. Their refusal to understand you does not require you to abandon your future and stand forever at the door of their judgment. Not every accusation requires a defense. Not every misunderstanding deserves an explanation. Not every conflict qualifies for continued access to your attention. Silence can be fear, but silence can also be wisdom. Confrontation can be courage, but confrontation can also be wounded pride wearing the clothes of boldness. The action alone does not reveal maturity. The purpose behind it does. So before you call, send a message, or reopen the discussion, ask, will this communication create responsible clarity, or will it simply move the imaginary courtroom into a real room? Your answer reveals the path. If communication is required, speak with purpose. If it is not, close the court. These are the 2 disciplines that now stand before you. If communication is required, do not carry the entire courtroom into the conversation. Speak once with purpose. Use a simple structure. State the relevant fact. Describe its effect. Name the request or boundary. Then stop. You might say, when this decision was made without consulting me, it affected my ability to fulfill my responsibility. In the future, I need to be included before that decision is final. That is clarity. It does not require a speech, an insult, or a dramatic conclusion. Remove imagined motives. Do not say, you did this because you have never respected me. You may not know why they did it. Remove historical accumulation. Do not attach every disappointment from the last 10 years to one present concern. Remove language designed to force shame, surrender, or emotional punishment. Say what is true. Say what is necessary. Say no more than purpose requires. And understand the nature of a boundary. A boundary is not your attempt to control another person's behavior. It is your decision about your own future action. If this continues, I will step away. If you raise your voice, I will end the conversation. If the agreement is not honored, I will reconsider my participation. You define what you will do. They remain responsible for what they choose. Prepare yourself for an imperfect outcome. They may disagree. They may refuse to apologize. Reconciliation may not occur, but clarity can still be successful. Success is not making them surrender. Success is acting with truth, discipline, and integrity. Now, if communication is not necessary, do not call suppressed resentment peace. Close the matter deliberately. Name the lesson. Accept what you cannot control. Refuse to rehearse another version. Redirect your attention toward the work, relationships, and responsibilities that are present now. Dismiss the imaginary witnesses. Release the imaginary jury. Stop retrying a case whose verdict cannot establish your identity. The court has remained open because you kept returning to it. You have authority to close it. When the scene returns, answer it with one truthful statement. I have examined this matter. I will take the action that belongs to me, and I will not argue with an absent person. I choose peace, and I will preserve my purpose. Then return to your life. You may need to do this more than once. Release is sometimes a repeated discipline. The old scene may knock again tomorrow, but repetition does not make it a command. Each time it returns, you can refuse entry, renew your decision, and redirect your mind. Now you have an executable response for both paths. If speech is necessary, speak clearly. If speech is unnecessary, release completely. You no longer need endless rehearsal to feel prepared or protected. But this practice must become more than a technique used after conflict. It must become an identity, a person whose peace is governed from within and never negotiated through every misunderstanding. At the beginning, you had left the room, but you were still carrying the argument. Now you can leave both the room and the trial. You have learned the path. Recognize the trigger. Discover what your identity believes is under threat. Expose the hunger for vindication. Test preparation against rehearsal. Pause before emotion becomes action. Name what is truly unresolved. Decide whether communication is necessary. Then speak with purpose or release with discipline. That is how you take back the seat of government in your mind. Peace is not the absence of difficult people. Peace is not a guarantee that everyone will judge you fairly. Peace is not the absence of anger, hurt, or unfinished feelings. Peace is the presence of internal government. It is the ability to remain responsible for who you become, even when you cannot control what someone else believes. So make these commitments. Stop rehearsing what cannot be changed. Refuse to place your identity on trial before every opinion. Choose clarity over emotional heat. Establish boundaries without hatred. Forgive without reopening doors that wisdom has closed. Protect your attention because your purpose is too important to be consumed by imaginary conflict. The mind may invite you back. Tomorrow, the old sentence may return. The perfect comeback may appear again. When it does, answer firmly. I have examined this matter. I have made my decision. I will do what responsibility requires, but I will not surrender this day. Then move forward. Imagine sleeping without drafting a defense. Imagine completing your work without replaying an insult. Imagine being misunderstood without losing your identity, corrected without collapsing, and provoked without becoming destructive. Imagine entering your future without dragging an absent opponent behind you. That is not weakness. That is calm strength. That is disciplined freedom. You do not need to become hard in order to become stable. You do not need to become silent in order to become peaceful. You simply need to become governed by truth instead of fear, by purpose instead of pride, by wisdom instead of impulse. May your words become clear, your boundaries become clean, and your heart become free from the burden of proving itself. May you have the courage to speak when purpose requires your voice, and the strength to remain silent when control is demanding a performance. Remember this principle. Say what purpose requires, release what control desires, and never sacrifice present peace to win an imaginary argument. The conversation in your head does not have to continue. The matter has been examined. The decision has been made. Govern your mind, guard your peace, and walk forward